What's good, YouTube? It's your boy back in this video. With the release of Phantom Nightmare finally on the horizon, there are a couple of key tips that you guys have to know in order for this upcoming format. I've been testing a couple of decks here and there, and I noticed some crucial interactions that will actually change the entire outcome of a game. So guys, without further ado, check this out. These major tips that you have to know in order to win this format. So the first major point that you have to know in order to win after Phantom Nightmare is to always special summon your monsters in defense mode wherever possible. This is really important because there are a couple of key interactions that can arise from you leaving your monsters in attack mode. Now, obviously this is not doable with Link monsters, which is fine, but whenever possible with your regular monsters, try to put them in defense mode. The first reason is the fact that Fire King can actually crash themselves to gain benefits from their effects. For example, if I had a Kirin on the board and I was able to crash this, then I can get the effect in the graveyard, because Kirin does not only have to be destroyed by card effects, it can be destroyed by battle or card effects to trigger the engrave effect to special summon and then destroy something. Alternatively, there are also cards that can special summon themselves out as extenders when a fire monster is destroyed. So if you actually left your Garunix here in attack mode, then I could actually crash one of my fire monsters and then special summon out Ponix in the damage step, which allows me to A, get a extender on board for free, and B, use the effect where it cannot be interacted with in the actual damage step. So you're not going to be able to Ash when I actually use the effect of Ponix because it's being special summoned out at the damage step, right? So this is really, really important. There are also other cards that can create pseudo extenders out of thin air by crashing into things. For example, Hida, the Fire Charmer Ablaze. What you can actually do is when your opponent has a monster in attack mode, you can easily just crash the Hida straight into the Garunix, destroy the Hida, and then use the Hida's effect to add a fire monster. But not only any fire monster, you can definitely add something like a Populous, which can also be triggered during the damage step, revealing itself to special summon, and also being able to add a copy of the Snake Eyes. So this effectively creates a bonfire scenario on legs whenever you're leaving your monsters in attack mode, because Hida just crashes and boom, I get to use my bonfire effect that can search for any fire monster with 1500 or less defense from my deck. Alternatively, you can also search the legendary Fire King Ponix and then still reveal it at the end of the damage step and trigger it to special summon, a lot like how you can already do it with Fire King Island, being able to add either Garunix or Ponix. It doesn't have to be in your hand at the time of a destruction to see, because it's in your hand where it's not public knowledge, right? So I can easily crash my Hida to add either Populous or Ponix and then special summon either or, use the effects in the damage step. You're not going to be able to interact, and I'm getting a lot of my effects off and a lot of free resources. So guys, please put your stuff in defense mode whenever possible. I know it's really, really common to try and put your stuff in attack mode when you see it has a ginormous attack, but especially this format, because of the Fire King interactions and because of Hida, you have to put your stuff in defense mode wherever possible.
Really quickly, if you guys aren't already subscribed to the channel, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button at the bottom. It'll go a long way to support the channel. Other than that, thanks a lot for tuning in.
And this, of course, brings me to my next point. Putting monsters in attack mode is obviously a liability against Fire Kings, so if you are playing Fire Kings, try to special summon your monsters in attack mode to your opponent's side of the field, specifically Nibiru tokens. Yes, so if we're actually Nibiruing our opponent on the first turn of the game, generally you probably want to give them in a token in attack mode, so then that way we can actually crash our fire monsters during our turn as an additional outlet to get free extenders, right? We just talked about cards like legendary Fire King Ponix or Garunix in our hand. Let's say that our fire monster gets stopped and we have no extenders. Well, we can now crash the Snake Eyes Ash into the token, then special summon out the Ponix from our hand. Similarly, you can also do the exact same thing with Hida. You know, Hida becoming a walking bonfire on legs is going to be able to crash itself into the ginormous Nib token, use the effect to add either Ponix or Populous, special summon it out in the damage step, and then go from there, right? So there are a lot of cool ways that we can actually benefit from forcing them to have an attack position monster on their field, especially if they're heeding the previous tip and playing around these cards. Now, you probably don't want to do this outside of turn 1, because anytime your opponent has a battle phase, giving them a ginormous Nib token is probably a recipe to disaster, because they're just going to clear your board and probably swing for game with that large Nib token. So I'm talking more specifically on turn 1. You know, we're going second, our opponent makes a board, we nib them, and we're like, hey, you know, give you an attack position Nib token so we can start playing on our turn by crashing if we have to. Okay guys, so the second major tip that you have to know for this upcoming format is when you open Infinite Impermanence and another hand trap, which one should you use first? Well, a lot of people might think, you know, the reasoning, I'm just gonna use my Effect Veiler instead of my Infinite Impermanence because I can use Infinite Imperm during my turn to stop something like an Appaloosa. Well, guys, in my opinion, you should be using Infinite Impermanence as your first hand trap this format if possible, because if you do not, then you will play hard into Triple Tactics Talent, which a lot of people are actually playing. So that just forces you to reveal your hand half the time, and then they are going to pick the Infinite Impermanence, which gets shuffled back to the deck. So instead of that, I could have used the Infinite Impermanence first, which guarantees that it does not turn on Tactics, because Tactics has to see a monster effect be activated that turn, right? Whereas Infinite Impermanence is a trap effect. So if I use this, Tactics is not live. I have my Imperm for their follow-up, and then there I have a lot more chance to stop their actual combo. So they're either gonna have to use Tactics to draw or use Tactics to rip out another card that was in the hand trap, and I stop them successfully, right? So guys, please use Infinite Impermanence as your first hand trap if possible, just to play around Triple Tactics Talent, because this card is actually everywhere. A lot of people are testing this. They realize that, hey, this is a very, very monster interaction heavy format, and Tactics happens to be a very, very powerful card in formats like this, where you can also try and push past your opponent's boards after you hand trap them, or rip out your opponent's hand if they play bad and use Effect Veiler before Imperm. So guys, make sure you know this tip. This is also particularly true when you have a going first board already set up and then you have Imperm in your back row. Let's say that your opponent goes for their turn and they start their play off with a high impact normal summon monster effect. We have Appaloosa here. Yeah, we could use Appaloosa's effect to negate, but then Tactics Talent is gonna blow us out really hard, right? So instead of that, you know, we can play around Tactics. Let's just use the Imperm here, even though it seems counterintuitive because we're kind of playing our hand. You know, we're revealing all of our resources to our opponent right away when we could have used the Appaloosa. But this plays around Tactics, which is really important, especially in the case where we have the Appaloosa, because we do not want this Appaloosa stolen and then being used as our own, right? In this particular scenario, it's also really, really nice to have, because if they go chain something like a Fire King Avatar Kirin, we still have the Appaloosa to negate that, so then this Imperm is guaranteed to resolve on the Snake Eye Ash, right? Because Appaloosa is only once per chain. So guys, again, please play around Triple Tactics Talent wherever possible, and just use your spell and trap cards to stop your opponents before your monster effects. Third major point of this upcoming format, I've seen people wait to activate Wanted during their main phase when they have another searcher card, because they think, oh, okay, I don't care about Droll. I can just chain the Wanted to the effect of Droll and Lockbird when I happen to get drolled on something like a Snake Eye Ash ad, right? So I'm not gonna use Wanted in the draw phase to play around Droll and Lockbird. Well, if you have a hand like this, personally, I think you should actually still use Wanted in the actual draw phase. Yes, I realize that we can chain Wanted to Droll after adding for Ash, but if that Ash does not resolve and our opponent happens to have Droll, you are still going to get punished on the actual Wanted. So here's what I mean. For example, if I go ahead and normal summon Ash, thinking, hey, if they have Droll, I can play around it, and my opponent hits me with an Infinite Impermanence, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, that kind of sucks, but hey, I still have my Wanted, I can still play, right? I'm going to activate Wanted now, still in my main phase. I'm going to add a copy of Witch, and then, surprise, your opponent hits you with the Droll and Lockbird. So this is where it gets a little tricky, where if your opponent has Droll and Lockbird plus any other hand trap to stop Snake Eye Ash, then it basically is considered that you did not have the Snake Eye Ash search, right? So this really Wanted is just our first search that we're making for that turn, which punishes you hard into Droll and Lockbird, and we could have completely circumvented this by activating this during the draw step to add the Witch. That way, if the Snake Eye Ash got impermed, we could still summon out the Witch, use the effect, and then from there we can set the original Sinful Spoil Snake Eye, and we're still not under Droll and Lockbird because we've done no searching yet, right? So if we go ahead and activate the Snake Eye here, and then we special summon out any of our other monsters, for example, Legendary Fire King Ponix, we can then use the effect and get some value out of it, right? To add either a Fire King Island, which, you know, it gets hit by Droll, but it doesn't matter. We still have the Sanctuary, that's a lot better. Or potentially adding something like a Circle or a Fire Skyburn. Both of these cards are a lot better in the state as opposed to just ending on like a Witch pass because you're not going to be able to add. So guys, I know people are saying, you know, don't reveal too much knowledge to your opponent if you don't have to, but just think outside the box. Sometimes it's better not to overcomplicate things, because in the instance where they do have multiple hand traps plus Droll, then you will get punished if you are holding the actual Wanted instead of using it in draw phase. So personally, my belief is I am going to be using Wanted a lot of times in the draw phase just to not overcomplicate things, unless I have like a spell searcher like Bonfire, which I'm fairly confident my opponent's not going to Ash, right? Because if they had Ash and Droll versus the Bonfire and they Ash the Bonfire and you go Wanted, it's kind of the same result that we're in right now if they imprint the Snake Eye Ash, right? So it's kind of something you have to really think about. but half the time, you know, just don't overthink it. Just activate Wanted in the draw phase, play around Droll guaranteed, and then just go from there. This brings me to my last and final tip about this bad boy, LINKURIBOH. Everyone seems to forget about this card. He actually has an effect in the graveyard, guys. This is a quick effect that says if it's in your graveyard, you contribute one level 1 monster, special summon this card. So, my point being, take advantage of LINKURIBOH in the graveyard. Anytime you have this card in the graveyard during the grind game, our level 1 monsters will be able to resolve their effects through anything that targets. So if I have LINKURIBOH there and my opponent goes Infinite Impermanence on my Ponyx, I can easily chain the effect of LINKURIBOH to tribute as a cost and then bring back LINKURIBOH. Their target's gone for the Imperm. I will resolve my Ponyx. This is also true for the other Snake Eyes monsters. I see a lot of DV replays and people are forgetting that they have LINKURIBOH tucked somewhere beneath their graveyard after turn 1. Everyone forgets about this card. But then it's also really important that you A, remember this card's effect, and also B, try to link climb with LINKURIBOH and get it into your graveyard as soon as possible, because this just guarantees for the rest of the duel your level 1 monsters will be resolving through Veiler or Imperm, right? So I can easily, if I'm link climbing at some point, I could just take one of the level 1s and go like, hey, I'm gonna go to LINKURIBOH just for the heck of it so I can get that in my graveyard. This is a very generic link card that can easily be used to rank up into other cards like the Charmers or potentially the Princess, because there's no restrictions on them, right? So just be a little careful when you're trying to go into the IP Masquerena plays, because this requires 2 non-link monsters, so that's where LINKURIBOH might not be a good idea to link climb into. But anytime that you can link climb into LINKURIBOH for free, just do it. Trust me, you're gonna thank yourself later. If your opponent happens to create a grind game situation, then LINKURIBOH is gonna come in handy. Speaking of LINKURIBOH, I wasn't gonna tell you guys this, but this is a very secret tip that I noticed through testing, and it's very complicated, but I want you guys to know this because this is very crucial, and this one point allowed me to actually win a duel that was pretty much unwinnable. Okay, so let's say this is my specific board, and I have LINKURIBOH in my graveyard with a level 1 monster on the board. For some reason, I want to go into Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf, let's say to add back the Ash Blossom. Okay, so I've already summoned a bunch of times. This is going to be my 5th summon. I'm going to summon out the Sunlight Wolf, and on the 5th summon. So I summon Sunlight Wolf with LINKURIBOH in the graveyard. Now, it's really important in this particular situation where you cannot trigger the Sunlight Wolf immediately to exercise your turn player priority and actually tribute your level 1 body for the effect of LINKURIBOH as turn player priority. Why? Because of the existence of NIBIRU. Specifically, because if I summoned out Sunlight Wolf as my 5th summon without exercising turn priority, my opponent can reveal Nib and tribute off my entire board. I lose everything and pass with the token. But if I use turn player priority to activate my quick effect before my opponent can activate theirs, then I can go effective LINKURIBOH. I'm going to tribute my Ponyx. Now, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna respond with Nib here so I don't get the Sunlight Wolf ad? If you do, that means after the smoke clears, I get a token, I lose my Sunlight Wolf, but I get the LINKURIBOH, which I can easily link up into something like a Dark and still play because I have 2 bodies, right? Or if you choose to hold the NIBIRU until my LINKURIBOH hits the board, then I will get the effect of Sunlight Wolf to add back a fire monster, which means even if you nib, I'm still going to be able to add back one of my resources, maybe something like an Ash Blossom, and potentially survive a turn. So you kind of create a fork in a road where it's a very win-win situation for yourself into NIBIRU, where your opponent has to choose either you get the effect of Sunlight Wolf to add, or you get the LINKURIBOH body back. And a lot of people just don't know about this, right? If they're just like, okay, I summon Sunlight Wolf as my 5th summon, anything on the summon, my opponent goes Nib, yeah, I just lose my entire board. But this, being a quick effect, allows you to tribute your level 1 monster before your opponent has a chance to respond with theirs, because again, you are turn player. So little niche scenarios like this come up a lot, and they will be the actual backbreaking difference between you winning a tournament and losing one. So make sure that you guys account for these little niche scenarios in your testing. Make sure you read all of your cards, and yeah, just like think about different scenarios that can come up. Like this one, for example, that came up for me, and I said, wow, this is really cool, and it's really important to know. I guarantee not a lot of people have thought about this, but you know, it will come up in an actual tournament and it will be super relevant. So yeah, guys, what do you think about the tips so far? Let us know in the comments below. Have we missed anything that you think is important to know to win in this upcoming format after Phantom Nightmare drops? Let us know in the comments below. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for tuning in.